Hey guys, so this is the Dungeon of the Dead 3 from this mighty tome of adventure. Gotta say, it's probably the biggest build I've done to date. Even though it's probably one of the easiest, the hard work was just in the investment in time. First off the bat, I know some of you are going to have played this adventure and you're going to know that the Dungeon of the Dead 3 was a wooden dungeon. I didn't want a wooden dungeon. I'm the DM, I can change it the way I want it. What I did need was a modular stone dungeon set. And every piece here is an individually designed part that can go on to create a multitude of different dungeon layouts. So the actual construction of it is quite simple and straightforward. This could be a ridiculously long video if I showed you how I made every last part. So I've focused on the base techniques that have gone into every room build here. And I won't honestly say that it's wholly finished. There are areas where I want to fit portals. There are areas I still need to continue making some doors. I've only got 4 doors. If you stick around till the end of the video, you will see a great little narrative tale told just here at this area. It's quite a big build. I've gone on quite a lot about it. I'm really pleased with it. I can't wait for my gamers to get through the rest of this dungeon and find the portal to Avernus. It's going to be a brilliant game. I'm really looking forward to it. Let's get on with that build. See you there. Okay, so here you can see the rough cut, just raw foam of the overall dungeon, and here in this first shot you can just see the overall layout. Here are the crypts in D15, 16, D7 where we get the Bowls altar, the entry in through the bathhouse there, through D9 where the Dead 3 doors are, and into Bane's altar. And then it sort of starts separating up a little bit then. My group will be heading through D18 where there's a gas build-up. Just here you can see the map. But I'm radically changing that part of the encounter at least. And they're heading through into the last of the crypts and where the worshippers kind of, where their restrooms are. It should get pretty hairy here, I reckon, in the adventure. Full on bit of combat. They've got to find the secret door, of course, down into where Tiamat's treasure is found. I've changed this area up a little bit as well. I want something that's a little bit more unusual. This is the Covenant of the Dead 3, and here I'm going to actually have a portal into Avernus here. So this is where my party will actually enter Avernus. There is a couple more rooms off in the map. There are storerooms. I might do something different there. Now the whole thing has been built with complete modularity in mind, so that I can just disassemble all of these parts and put them back together in different ways. You can see here on the end I've got this kind of locking tab that I'm also using that will interlock with rooms, making it a bit more stable on the table. So yeah, that'll just slot into the gaps that are left in the rooms. That's it. Perfect. So all of the rooms are also designed on a grid system measure, but I don't use an inch. I actually use the width of my ruler, which is a bit wider than an inch. I actually have 7 players in my group, so there can be a lot of miniatures on the table in an area when you've got a group of that size. Just makes it a little bit easier. I also don't have to measure anything out. I just lay the rule down and I've got my measurement straight away. So the full build is 12 or so feet in length, and it's about 4.5 to 5 feet wide, so it's pretty big. That said, all of the individual components are a pretty straightforward build to create. I would say it took 4 to 5 weeks in total to build this whole dungeon set, and of course I can make many different dungeon layouts from it. The whole thing's created from EVA foam, which is extremely versatile. So let's get on to the build. So I have 3 rooms to make that come off this particular corridor section here. They're D19, 20 and 21. They're simple rectangular rooms. So the construction of these will be quite straightforward and allow me to cover the basics of using EVA foam. There are different types of EVA foam. These coloured pieces that I've got here are playmat foam that you can get from Halfords. I do prefer the blacker foam that you can get from Halfords. The other foam I've got here is from Aldi. It's a much more porous foam. It didn't take well to a lot of the processes later on, but hey, that's what it turned out to be. When it comes down to what EVA foam to use, easy access foam is things like playmats, floor mats that you can buy from DIY stores or from Halfords. The important factor of EVA foam is its density. So I also have a professional density foam as well, and I get this from a company called Polyprops. So pretty much this whole build was made from the scraps of my EVA foam. And just remember guys, all these companies are UK based, but I'll put some links down in the doobly bits. So the first important aspect of cutting any foam is how sharp your knife is. A lot of crafters out there say replace the blades constantly. I don't say that. Buy yourself one of these sharpeners and sharpen your blades. Honestly, they will last you 100 times longer, cost you 100 times less than buying blades constantly. So my steel rule is the governance for my dimensions, but I've already cut this smaller piece of foam here to that dimension, so I can use that more easily than a big long meter steel rule. My first task is to square up the piece of scrap so that I've got a suitable floor piece at the right size. I think these rooms were 10 feet by 15 feet, so it's effectively 2 measures by 3 measures using my scrap of foam there. And then I can use that freshly cut piece to cut out the remaining 2 rooms. I use the denser coloured floor tiles for the wall structure, just makes them more sturdy. My rule of course is my measure for verticality as well as the grid scale. On this dungeon set I'd made a decision that I didn't want to have complete walls, so I ensure that I cut a ragged line a little way above my vertical measure so that I can employ either ruins or a continuation of a wall that doesn't interfere with gameplay. That said, in hindsight, I do wish I'd cut them slightly taller, and probably will do on future builds that expand on this dungeon set. With all of the pieces now cut, I can score a line so I know where I need to glue the floor piece at the right level before I cut the wall sections down to the right length. And for that I can use my floor pieces as a guide as to where I need to cut. And now, using my ancient glue gun, I can stick that down in the right place. I'd made the design choice that all of the locking tabs for the whole system would be on the corridor pieces, not on the room pieces. So the rooms will have an open area, but the tab will be cut for the corridor. So here I am just putting that together so that I can then check it against the room. And it looks pretty good. It worked very, very well. It's worked very well in gameplay as well. I know I could have used magnets. I tried them. I wasn't as keen as my tab system. I also know that there are other ways of doing the tab so that it's not quite a flagstone sitting over the doorway. On to some detailing. Here you can see a piece that I've done earlier. So this texturing is created with a hot point tool. You can use a soldering iron or a wood burning tool, a pyrography machine. I historically have always used a soldering iron, but nowadays I tend to use my pyrography machine because I can get a much finer detail with it. One very important piece of equipment when you start heating EVA foam up or sanding it or grinding it is a mask, and it must be a respirator type mask because you're dealing with fumes and gases. This is the brand that I use, and it has worked perfectly. Without this mask, I have made myself very ill. So there is the warning on EVA foam. So I started off by pyrographying the stonework of the walls. And I have to say, I was really pleased with this, but I've since come to realise the quality of finish you get following Blackmagic Craft's individual bricks system. I don't know that I'd want to build this entire dungeon using that system, but I think any additional pieces that I do build for this set, I will use individual bricks as opposed to pyrographying. The other problem, I think, in hindsight with my brickwork for this dungeon was I kept it too regular rather than a bit more medieval in style, shall we say. Now I know some people will measure out their flagstones, but on a smaller room like this you can just eyeball it. The problem I faced here was that more porous EVA foam. It was a really difficult thing to use the pyrography machine with, and also the soldering iron with. I tried both. So I won't be buying the Aldi foam again. The flagstones are just finished off with some nice cracks that give them that character. EVA foam needs heat to set it. The hot point tool will certainly go a long way to starting that off, but then you want to hit it with a hot air gun to set the surface. Now what will happen initially is the foam will go quite floppy with the heat of the gun. Be wary of your hot melt glue, obviously that can melt as well. But once it cools, it will set firm, and it will also set firm in the shape in which you bend it to. Now here I'm just using straight edges, so there's no bend. But that option is one of the primary reasons why I prefer EVA foam to XPS foam. The final seals are a coat of PVA. I also sprinkle into that, whilst it's still wet, some browning plaster, which I've discussed in my other videos, and then I finish that off once it's dry with a black masonry paint. I stipple this on with a wet brush so that it's not quite as solid as it comes out of the tin, and just cover the whole thing, leave that to dry. If you've watched any of my videos, you'll know that I am not a fan of cold grey wall colours. I always start my stonework with stronger colour that I can then dull down to what I want it to be. So here I'm working with blues and reds and browns just to get some variation. I don't really care too much at this point what the physical colour is. I just want it to be dark and rich so that I can build up to some highlights from that point. I'm a professional illustrator, so my paint process tends to follow similar principles in paint mixing to when I'm creating a painting for a client. So my palette will develop in an organic manner from the colour that I mixed as the base coat to the stonework, lightening the colour up with either white or other light colours that will shift the hue of the colour that I'm working with. That can lead to some exciting stone surface that has a more natural coloration than just a straight up stone cold grey. So from that deeper warmish blue colour that I mixed at the beginning, I've just added consistently white in this particular mix, getting lighter and lighter and lighter. And each passing layer of paint has only been dry brushed on, with the final layer, this one, having the lightest amount of dry brushing done with the lightest colour, just to pick out the highlight edges. And here I added a little bit of a light brown into that blue to get a greenish sort of colour, which is working as lichens and mosses on the stonework. And I'm just stippling that in and around now just to add a bit of variation to the colour.
On with it! Cast it now!
So my party have done this first section here, and then dreaded 2020, the year of lockdown, happened. So that's where they're stuck right now. This set really was an absolute blast to build. A lot of hours. I also made a couple of aesthetic choices. I wanted some elevation, so there are raised areas down there. I wanted an up and down aspect rather than just a completely flat dungeon set. So the one thing I did want to keep from the Dungeon of the Dead 3 in its style was the stagnant water element that is through large portions of the dungeon, and I've used the simplest option, which was just PVA. Didn't worry about bubbles or anything like that because I felt it just added to the sludge and the sewage that was in here. If you're enjoying these videos, please hit that subscribe. If you do want to help support the channel in a financial way, you can head over to my Patreon, which the link is down in the doobly bits. I also put a splash screen for it at the end. And that will definitely make these videos full of better quality footage, lots of fun, and a few extra techniques as well. See you there.